The morning sun rose over New Eden like it had for the past 27 years. Golden light spread across endless fields of green wheat that moved gently in the warm breeze. Children ran through the streets of Harbor Town, the largest settlement on the planet. Their laughter mixed with the sounds of farmers starting their daily work. Sarah Chen stood on her porch and watched her two young sons chase each other around the apple trees in their yard. The older boy, Tommy, was 8 years old and always tried to catch his little brother Mike, who was only 5. Sarah smiled as she sipped her morning coffee. Life on New Eden was peaceful and good. New Eden was home to 2,300,000 people. Most of them were farmers who grew food that was shipped to other human worlds. The planet had rich soil and perfect weather for growing crops. There were no dangerous animals, no poisonous plants, and no deadly diseases. It was the kind of world that human families dreamed of when they left Earth to find new homes among the stars. The planet had 5 major cities and dozens of smaller towns. Harbor Town was built next to a large lake and served as the main port for shipping crops off-world. Crystal Falls was in the mountains where miners dug up rare metals. Green Valley was surrounded by the biggest farms on the planet. Sunset Bay sat on the coast of the largest ocean. New Hope was the capital city where the colonial government worked. Above the planet, 3 orbital stations floated in space. They were busy places where cargo ships came and went every day. Workers there loaded grain, vegetables, fruits, and meat onto huge transport ships that would carry the food to hungry people on other worlds. The stations also had shops, restaurants, and homes for the 20,000 people who worked in space. Captain Marcus Webb commanded the orbital defense platform called Guardian Station. It had light weapons that were meant to protect against pirates or asteroid strikes. Webb had been a soldier in his younger days, but he came to New Eden because he wanted a quiet life. The defense platform had not fired its weapons in over 15 years. Most days, Webb and his small crew of 30 people just watched cargo ships come and go. On this particular morning, Webb was drinking his second cup of coffee when something appeared on his long-range sensors. It was big, very big. He called his sensor operator, a young woman named Lisa Park. "Lisa, can you tell me what that is?" Webb pointed at the strange readings on his screen. Lisa worked at her control panel for several minutes. Her face grew pale as she read the data. "Captain, there are ships coming toward us, lots of ships." "How many ships?" Webb asked. "I count 47 vessels, sir. They are moving fast and they will be here in 6 hours. Webb felt his stomach drop. 47 ships was not a trading fleet. It was not a group of colonists looking for a new home. It was a war fleet, but who would attack New Eden? The planet had no enemies. It had no military value. It was just a farming world full of peaceful people. "Are they human ships?" Webb asked, though he already knew the answer. Lisa shook her head. "No, sir. The computer does not recognize their design. These are alien ships." Webb immediately sent a message to the colonial government in New Hope. Governor Janet Morrison received the warning with shock and fear. New Eden had no real military. The planet had a small police force and some emergency workers, but no army and no warships. The only weapons on the entire planet were hunting rifles and the light guns on Guardian Station. Governor Morrison called an emergency meeting with her advisors. They tried to contact the approaching fleet, but the aliens did not answer their messages. They sent offers of trade, requests for peaceful talks, and even offers of food and supplies. The alien ships remained silent and kept coming closer. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the planet's top scientist, worked frantically to learn about the alien ships. She discovered they belonged to a species called the Zephyrians. The computer files showed that Zephyrians were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and large black eyes. They ruled a group of worlds called the Zephyrian hegemony. The files said they were known to be aggressive and territorial. "Governor," Dr. Hayes said with a trembling voice, "the Zephyrians consider this part of space to be their territory. They believe humans have no right to be here." Governor Morrison felt cold fear spread through her body. "Can we evacuate the planet?" "Not in 6 hours," her advisor replied. "We would need weeks to move 2 million people." Our transport ships are all away delivering crops to other worlds. The governor made the hardest decision of her life. She ordered all orbital stations to prepare for emergency evacuation. She told the planet's communication system to broadcast a general warning to all citizens. People should go to their homes and wait for further instructions. She hoped the aliens just wanted to scare them and would leave when they saw that new Eden was no threat to anyone. As the alien fleet grew closer, Captain Webb and his crew on Guardian Station watched their approach with growing dread. The Zephyrian ships were dark and angular, like giant metal spears pointed at their peaceful world. The largest ship was over 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapon ports. 3 hours before the aliens arrived, the first evacuation ships began leaving the orbital stations. Families with small children got priority boarding. Sarah Chun and her 2 boys were among the lucky ones who made it to an evacuation ship. As their transport pulled away from the station, little Mike pressed his face against the window and asked his mother why they had to leave their home. "We will come back soon," Sarah told her son. Though she feared it might not be true, many people did not make it off the orbital stations in time. When the Zephyrian fleet arrived, there were still 15,000 people trying to evacuate. Captain Webb made the brave choice to stay at his post and help coordinate the evacuation. He sent his own crew away on the last transport but remained alone on Guardian Station. The Zephyrian fleet commander was named Korath. He was a veteran of many wars and believed that humans were a dangerous species that would eventually threaten Zephyrian space. When his superiors ordered him to make an example of New Eden, he felt no mercy. To him, humans were pests that needed to be eliminated before they became a real problem. Korath opened communication with the human orbital stations. His voice was cold and harsh when he spoke. "Humans of this world," he said, "you have built your colony in space that belongs to the Zephyrian hegemony. You will leave immediately or be destroyed." Captain Webb responded from Guardian Station. "We are evacuating our people as fast as we can. Please give us more time." "You have had 27 years, Korath replied. "Time is over." The Zephyrian attack began without further warning. Bright beams of energy lanced out from their warships and struck the orbital stations. Guardian Station's shields held for 30 seconds before collapsing. The station exploded in a brilliant flash of light, killing Captain Webb instantly. The other 2 orbital stations tried to flee, but the Zephyrian ships were faster. Within minutes, both stations were destroyed along with the 15,000 people still aboard them. The evacuation ships that had escaped earlier watched in horror from a safe distance as their homes burned in space. But the aliens were not finished. Korath turned his fleet toward the planet below and began bombing the surface. The cities of New Eden had no defenses against orbital bombardment. Harbor Town was the first to die, consumed by nuclear fire that turned the lake into boiling steam. Crystal Falls in the mountains lasted only minutes. Longer before antimatter bombs turned the peaks into glowing craters, the people on the surface tried to run, but there was nowhere to hide from weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Green Valley's vast farms became fields of radioactive ash. Sunset Bay and its beautiful beaches were vaporized along with everyone who lived there. New Hope, the capital city, was struck by dozens of bombs that left nothing but a smoking hole in the ground. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. The Zephyrians were thorough in their destruction. They targeted not just cities and towns, but also individual farms, roads, bridges, and any sign of human presence. They wanted to make sure that nothing remained of the human colony. When it was over, New Eden was silent. The green fields were gone. The laughing children were gone. The farmers and miners and shopkeepers were all gone. 2,300,000 people had died in a single day. The planet that had been humanity's garden world was now a burned wasteland covered in radioactive dust. The evacuation. Ships that had escaped carried only 8,000 survivors. They watched from space as their world died, knowing that their families and friends were gone forever. Among them was Sarah Cheen, holding her 2 boys as they cried for their lost home. Commander Korath was satisfied with his work. He sent a message to Zephyrian High Command reporting that the human colony had been completely eliminated. He believed he had sent a clear message to humanity about Zephyrian power. He thought other human worlds would be afraid and would stay away from Zephyrian space. The alien fleet departed New Eden and returned to their own territory. Behind them they left only death and silence. The planet that had once been full of life and hope was now a tomb floating in the darkness of space. The evacuation ships scattered to different human worlds, carrying news of the massacre. The survivors told their terrible story to anyone who would listen. They spoke of their peaceful world and their murdered families. They spoke of the aliens who had killed without mercy or reason. Sarah Chun and her boys eventually reached Earth, the mother world of humanity. She told government officials about New Eden and the Zephyrians. She showed them pictures of her farm and her husband who had died in the bombing. She begged them to make sure that no other human colony would suffer the same fate. The officials listened politely and promised to investigate. They told Sarah that they would file protests with other alien governments and seek justice through diplomatic channels. But Sarah could see in their eyes that they thought New Eden was too far away and too small to matter much. Earth had billions of people and hundreds of colony worlds. The loss of one farming planet seemed like a minor tragedy to them. For 3 weeks, the massacre of New Eden was just another news story that most people quickly forgot. The galaxy was a big place with many problems. Human officials sent messages to the Zephyrians demanding explanations, but received only silence. In return, some human worlds increased their defenses, but most people believed the aliens would be satisfied with destroying one colony. They were wrong. The silence that followed the destruction of New Eden was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Deep in the heart of human space, ancient machines were beginning to wake up. Old shipyards that had been quiet for decades started receiving new orders. Military officers who had been enjoying peaceful retirements found themselves called back to duty. The Zephyrians had made one terrible mistake. They thought humans were like other species in the galaxy, weak, divided, and quick to forget their losses. They believed that destroying one world would make humans afraid and keep them away from Zephyrian territory. But humans were different. When pushed too far, they did not retreat. They did not forget, and they did not forgive. The silence of New Eden would soon be answered with a roar that would shake the galaxy. The survey ship Discovery had been exploring empty space for 6 months when Captain David Park received new orders. His mission was to check on distant human colonies and map new trade routes. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Park and his crew of 25 people spent their days scanning planets and asteroids for valuable minerals. Park was Lisa Park's father. Lisa had died on Guardian Station 3 weeks ago, but David did not know this yet. The Discovery was too far from human space to receive regular news updates. The last message they had received was 2 months old and talked about a good harvest season on the farming worlds. On Tuesday morning, Park was reading reports when his navigation officer called out, "Captain, we are approaching the New Eden system." Park nodded and marked their position on his chart. New Eden was supposed to be their next stop for refueling and resupply. The colony had always been friendly to survey ships, and Park looked forward to getting fresh food and news from home, but when the Discovery dropped out of faster-than-light travel, something was wrong. Park's sensors should have detected the busy orbital stations around New Eden immediately. Instead, they found only silence and floating debris. "Where are the stations?" Park asked his sensor operator. The young man worked frantically at his controls. "Sir, I am detecting wreckage. Lots of wreckage. It looks like the orbital stations have been destroyed." Park felt his heart stop. He ordered his ship to move closer to the planet. What they found made his crew sick with horror. The beautiful, green world that had fed millions of people across human space was now a burned wasteland. Cities were gone. Farms were gone. Everything was gone. Park immediately sent an emergency message to Earth using his ship's most powerful transmitter. He sent pictures and sensor readings that showed the complete destruction of New Eden. He reported that, too, Million people were missing and presumed dead. He requested immediate assistance from the military. The message took 6 days to reach Earth through the network of communication relays. When it arrived at the colonial office in Geneva, Secretary Helen Rodriguez nearly dropped her coffee cup. She read the report 3 times before believing it was real. Rodriguez immediately called an emergency meeting with the Human Federation Council. Representatives from all major human worlds gathered in the great assembly hall on Earth. They watched in stunned silence as Park's images played on the massive screens above them. The pictures showed New Eden's capital city as a smoking crater, 20 kilometers wide. The farming valleys that had once fed millions were now fields of radioactive glass. The beautiful lakes and forests that had attracted colonists from across human space were gone forever. President Marcus Thompson of the United Human Federation stood at the podium with tears in his eyes. He had visited New Eden many times and knew Governor Morrison personally. Now she was dead along with everyone else on the planet. "Citizens of humanity," Thompson said in a voice heavy with grief and anger, "we have suffered the greatest tragedy in our history. The colony of New Eden has been completely destroyed by an alien attack. 2,300,000 innocent people have been murdered." The assembly hall erupted in shocked voices and angry shouts. Representatives demanded to know who had done this terrible thing and why. Thompson raised his hand for silence and continued his speech. "We have identified the attackers as the Zephyrian hegemony. They claim that New Eden was built in their territory without permission. They offered no warnings and accepted no negotiations. They simply came and killed everyone." Thompson paused and looked directly into the cameras that were broadcasting his words to billions of people across human space. "The Zephyrians believe they have taught us a lesson about staying in our place. They believe we will be afraid and will abandon our colonies near their borders. They are wrong." The president pressed a button on his podium and new images appeared on the screens. These showed vast underground facilities that most humans did not know existed. Massive shipyards carved into asteroids. Weapon factories hidden beneath the surfaces of dead moons. Military bases that had been secret for decades. "For 50 years, humanity has prepared for this day," Thompson continued. "We hoped it would never come. We built our colonies and traded with peaceful aliens and lived quiet lives. But we also remembered the lessons of our history. We remembered that bullies and killers exist everywhere in the universe. We prepared for war while hoping for peace." Thompson's voice grew stronger and more determined. "Today I am authorizing the activation of the Total War Protocol. Every hidden shipyard will begin building warships. Every secret factory will start making weapons. Every human world will contribute to our response. The Zephyrians wanted to see what happens when you murder innocent humans. They are about to find out." Across human space, the president's speech was broadcast to every colony, every space station, and every ship. Billions of people watched and listened as their leader declared that humanity would not accept the massacre of New Eden. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On Mars, the giant underground shipyards that had been building civilian cargo ships for decades suddenly switched to military production. Workers who had never seen a warship began assembling massive dreadnoughts from secret plans that had been waiting for this day. The red planet's surface split open to reveal launch rails that could fire completed battleships directly into space. On Europa, the ice-covered moon of Jupiter, military engineers began activating weapons factories that had been hidden beneath the frozen surface. These facilities had been built during humanity's expansion into the solar system but had never been used. Now they came alive with the sounds of machines building torpedo launchers, energy cannons, and armor plating for the coming war fleet. The asteroid belt around Earth's sun contained dozens of secret shipyards disguised as mining operations. These facilities were so large they had been carved into asteroids the size of small moons. Each one could build 100 warships at the same time. For 50 years they had remained dark and silent. Now they blazed with light as millions of workers began the greatest Construction project in human history. Admiral Elena Vasquez received her new orders while she was visiting her daughter on the farming world of Ceres Prime. Vasquez had been the top military commander in human space until she retired 5 years ago to spend time with her family. She was a small woman with gray hair and quiet manners, but she had never lost a battle in 30 years of service. The message from President Thompson was simple: Elena, we need you. Come home immediately. Vasquez kissed her daughter goodbye and took the next transport ship to Earth. When she arrived at Federation headquarters, she found the building buzzing with activity. Officers who had been enjoying peaceful retirements were returning to duty. Civilians with engineering and manufacturing skills were volunteering for military service. The entire human government was transforming itself for war. President Thompson met with Vasquez in his private office. Elena, I need you to command our response to the New Eden massacre. We are going to build the largest fleet in galactic history, and I want you to lead it. Vasquez looked at the classified reports about New Eden's destruction. She studied the intelligence files about the Zephyrian hegemony and their military capabilities. The aliens had about 12,000 warships spread across 50 star systems. It was a formidable force that had conquered dozens of weaker species over the past 1,000 years. How many ships will I have? Vasquez asked. Thompson smiled grimly. How many do you want? I want enough ships to make sure this never happens again, Vasquez replied. I want the Zephyrians to surrender the moment they see us coming. I want every other alien species in the galaxy too. Understand that attacking human civilians is a death sentence? Then you shall have them, Thompson said. We are activating every shipyard, every factory, and every construction facility in human space. We will build as many ships as it takes. Within days, the news of humanity's mobilization began spreading. Across the galaxy, alien intelligence services reported massive activity in human space, but their analysts found the reports hard to believe. The peaceful humans who had spent decades trading and farming were suddenly building what appeared to be the largest military fleet ever assembled. The Zephyrian High Command received these intelligence reports with amusement. General Korath, who had destroyed New Eden, told his superiors that the reports were obviously exaggerated. Humans were weak creatures who would make a few threats and then forget about their lost colony. The idea that they could build hundreds of thousands of warships was ridiculous. Let them waste their resources on a few extra patrol boats, Korath said dismissively. When they realize the cost of building a real fleet, they will give up and go back to their farming. But the reports kept coming. Alien spies near human space sent back increasingly alarming information. The humans were not building a few extra patrol boats. They were constructing massive battle fleets that seemed to appear from nowhere. Ships the size of cities were taking shape in orbital yards that had been invisible just weeks before. Dr. Sarah Chun, the survivor from New Eden, found herself working 18-hour days at the Federation's new military headquarters. Her experience as a farmer might not seem useful for building warships, but she understood logistics and supply chains better than most military officers. The Federation needed people who could organize the movement of materials and workers across hundreds of star systems. Sarah's 2 boys stayed with her parents on Earth while she threw herself into the war effort. Every day she worked on planning how to feed and supply the millions of people who were building humanity's response fleet. She thought about her husband and neighbors who had died on New Eden, and her grief gave her the strength to work through exhaustion and stress. We need more steel for the shipyards on Titan, reported Colonel Williams, one of Sarah's assistants. Redirect the mining ships from the Proxima system, Sarah replied without looking up from her charts. And increase food shipments to the construction crews. They are working triple shifts and need more calories. The scale of humanity's mobilization was staggering. Every human world contributed something to the war effort. Agricultural planets increased food production to feed the millions of workers building ships. Mining worlds stripped entire asteroids down to their cores to provide metal for ship hulls. Manufacturing worlds converted their civilian factories to produce weapons and military equipment. Advanced human colonies that had developed new technologies shared their innovations with the military. Faster engines, stronger armor, more powerful weapons, and better sensors all flowed into the designs for the new warships. Ships that would have been impossible to build just months before began taking shape in the hidden shipyards on the world of New Geneva. The Federation's top scientists worked to decode captured Zephyrian technology. They studied wreckage from the attack on New Eden and learned about alien weapons and defenses. This information was immediately sent to the shipyards so that human vessels could be designed to defeat Zephyrian equipment. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, who had escaped New Eden's destruction, led a team of researchers studying Zephyrian psychology and military tactics. She wanted to understand how the aliens thought and fought so that Admiral Vasquez could plan the most effective attack. The Zephyrians believe in overwhelming force, Dr. Hayes reported to a meeting of military planners. They attack weak targets with large fleets to achieve quick victories. They have never faced an enemy that could match their numbers. Admiral Vasquez nodded as she reviewed the research reports. Then we will give them something they have never seen before. We will show them what happens when humanity decides to go to war. The construction continued day and night across human space. Massive dreadnoughts that could destroy entire fleets took shape in the hidden shipyards. Carriers that could launch thousands of fighter craft rolled off assembly lines. Support ships that could keep a fleet supplied for years were built in enormous numbers, but it was not just about building ships. Humanity also began training the millions of people who would crew the new vessels. Veterans came out of retirement to train new recruits. Civilians with useful skills were given crash courses in military operations. The entire human species was transforming itself into a war machine. 6 weeks after the destruction of New Eden, Admiral Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the new Federation headquarters and watched as the first completed battle group left Earth's orbital shipyards. 12 massive battleships accompanied by dozens of support vessels headed out toward the rally point where the main fleet was assembling. It was just the beginning. Reports from across human space told of similar scenes on hundreds of worlds. Ships were being completed faster than anyone had thought possible. The hidden shipyards were revealing their true capacity, and it was far greater than even human leaders had imagined. President Thompson joined Vasquez on the observation deck as another battle group departed. "How long until we are ready?" he asked. Vasquez checked her tablet computer, which showed real-time reports from shipyards across human space. New vessels were being completed every hour. 3 more months, she said. 3 months and we will have the largest fleet in galactic history. And then? Thompson asked. Admiral Vasquez looked out at the stars where her fleet was gathering. Then we remind the galaxy why you should never attack innocent humans. We remind them that beneath our peaceful exterior lies something that can darken the very stars themselves. The president nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about staying in their place. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping quietly among the stars for 50 years. They had awakened humanity's capacity for total war, and humanity was very, very good at war when they put their minds to it. The shipyards of Titan had been quiet for 40 years. Most people thought they were just mining stations that dug ice from the moon's surface. They were wrong. Deep beneath the frozen ground, massive construction bays stretched for hundreds of kilometers. These facilities had been built in secret after humanity's first contact with hostile aliens decades ago. Chief Engineer Maria Santos stood in the main control room and watched as the first super dreadnought slowly rose from its construction bay. The ship was 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could crack a planet's surface. Its hull was made from materials so advanced that most human scientists did not know they existed. Bay 7 reports the Vengeance is ready for launch, reported her assistant. Santos nodded and pressed the button that would open the massive doors above them. For the first time in 40 years, Titan's hidden shipyards revealed themselves to the universe. What had appeared to be a simple mining moon suddenly split open like a flower. exposing the greatest military construction facility ever built. The Vengeance rose majestically into space, followed by 11 more super dreadnoughts. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy an entire fleet. More importantly, each ship carried a message written in nuclear fire. Humanity would not forget New Eden. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. On Mars, the red planet's surface opened to reveal launch rails that fired completed battleships directly into space. The asteroid belt around Earth buzzed with activity as hidden shipyards revealed themselves one by one. Even Earth's moon split open to show massive weapons factories that had been disguised as research stations. Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the launch from her flagship, the new command ship Unity. The Unity was the largest vessel ever built by humans, serving as both a warship and a mobile headquarters. Its bridge could coordinate the movements of 1 million ships simultaneously. "Admiral," reported Commander Jackson, her chief of staff, "we have confirmation from all sectors. The mobilization is proceeding faster than projected." Vasquez studied the holographic display that showed human space. Every star system was marked with symbols showing ship construction, troop training, and resource production. The scale was breathtaking. Every human world was contributing to what historians would later call the Great Mobilization. On the agricultural world of New Harvest, farmers worked day and night to feed the millions of people building the war fleet. The planet's population had volunteered to work 18-hour days to make sure no shipyard worker went hungry. Children too young to work in the fields helped by gathering vegetables and caring for livestock. Governor Patricia Wells stood in her command center and coordinated food shipments to over 200 construction sites. "We need another 1 million tons of grain for the Proxima shipyards," she told her logistics chief. "Already loaded and ready to ship," came the reply. "The transport convoy will launch in 2 hours." Wells nodded with satisfaction. New Harvest had been settled by refugees from various Earth disasters 50 years ago. They understood what it meant to lose everything. When they heard about New Eden, every farmer on the planet had volunteered to work without rest until humanity's response was ready. The mining world of deep rock had been stripped almost bare to provide metal for ship construction. Massive automated miners worked continuously, digging deeper into the planet's core than ever before. The world's administrator, Director Kim Park, pushed his equipment beyond all safety limits to meet the demand for raw materials. "Sir, the deep miners are overheating," reported his chief engineer. "We need to shut down for maintenance." "No," Park replied firmly. "Every hour we delay means more time for the aliens to prepare. Push the machines harder. If they break, we will build new ones." Park's miners were working so hard that the planet's surface was beginning to collapse in some areas. But they continued digging because they knew that every ton of metal they produced would become part of a ship that would avenge New Eden on the industrial world of New Detroit. Factories that had been making civilian goods for decades suddenly switched to military production. Assembly lines that had built farming equipment now constructed missile launchers. Plants that had manufactured air recyclers for space stations began making life support systems for warships. Factory supervisor Janet Wilson had worked at the same plant for 20 years, making peaceful products for human colonies. Now she supervised the construction of weapons that could level cities. The work was harder and more dangerous, but she and her workers pushed themselves because they knew their labor was helping to build humanity's response. "How many torpedo launchers did we complete today?" Wilson asked her assistant. 237, came the reply. "That is 50 more than yesterday." "Good," Wilson said. "Tomorrow we will make 300. The transformation was not limited to the major industrial worlds. Even small colonies contributed what they could. The research station on Europa provided new shield technology that made human ships nearly invulnerable. The agricultural moon of Ceres sent food and medical supplies. The trading post at Proxima Centauri served as a coordination center for ship movements. Captain Sarah Chun found herself assigned to one of the most important jobs in the mobilization. As a logistics coordinator, she was responsible for making sure that materials and workers got to where they were needed most. Her office on Earth was filled with screens showing the status of construction projects across hundreds of star systems. "The Vega shipyards need more welders," reported her assistant, Lieutenant Morrison. "Transfer 1,000 workers from the completed project at Volf 359, Sean replied without hesitation, "and send them extra food rations. They will be working double shifts." Chin had lost her husband and home on New Eden, but she channeled her grief into organizing humanity's response. Every ship that rolled off the production lines was another step toward justice for her murdered family and friends. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes led a team of scientists who were designing new weapons specifically for fighting Zephyrians. They studied every piece of alien technology they could find and developed countermeasures for Zephyrian defenses. Their work was classified at the highest levels, but rumors spread through the scientific community about weapons that could destroy entire star systems. "The new antimatter torpedoes are ready for testing," Hayes reported to Admiral Vasquez during their weekly briefing. "How powerful are they?" Vasquez asked. "Each torpedo carries enough antimatter to destroy a moon," Hayes replied. "We have built 10,000 of them." Vasquez nodded grimly. The weapons being created for the war fleet were beyond anything that had existed before. Humanity was not just building more ships than their enemies. They were building better ships with weapons that would shock the galaxy. The Zephyrian hegemony received intelligence reports about human activity, but their leaders found the information hard to believe. General Korath, who had destroyed New Eden, dismissed most of the reports as exaggerations. "The humans are building some extra patrol ships," he told the Zephyrian High Command. "This is normal after an attack. They want to feel safer, so they will waste resources on a few dozen vessels that will make no difference." But the reports kept coming, and they painted a picture that disturbed even Korath. Human space was buzzing with activity on a scale that seemed impossible. Hundreds of star systems were involved in what appeared to be the largest military buildup in galactic history. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Vex, "our spies near human space are sending increasingly alarming reports. They claim the humans are building thousands of warships." Korath laughed dismissively. "Thousands? That is ridiculous. The humans are farmers and traders. They do not have the industrial capacity to build a real fleet. Our intelligence officers are being fooled by human propaganda." But deep in Zephyrian space, a few military analysts were beginning to worry. Commander Zex studied the reports from human space and noticed patterns that disturbed him. The humans were not just building ships randomly. They were following a coordinated plan that involved their entire civilization. "General," Zex reported to his superior, "I believe we may have underestimated human capabilities. These reports suggest they have been preparing for large-scale warfare for decades." The general dismissed Zex's concerns. "The humans are weak. We proved that when we destroyed their colony without losing a single ship. They will build a few vessels, make some angry speeches, and then forget about their losses. It is the way of inferior species." While the Zephyrians argued among themselves, humanity's mobilization continued to gain momentum. The recruitment centers on every human world were overwhelmed with volunteers. People of all ages and backgrounds wanted to serve in the fleet that would avenge New Eden. Commander David Park, whose daughter Lisa had died defending New Eden, volunteered to serve despite being past normal retirement age. His experience as a survey ship captain made him valuable for training new crews. Park worked 20-hour days teaching young officers how to navigate in hostile space. "Remember," Park told a class of new navigators, "when we reach Zephyrian space, we will be outnumbered and far from home. Every mistake could cost lives. Every calculation must be perfect." The students listened carefully to their instructor, knowing that he had personal reasons for wanting them to succeed. Park's daughter had died trying to protect innocent people. Now he was training the officers who would make sure such a tragedy never happened again. The training programs were as intensive as the ship construction. Millions of new recruits learned how to operate the advanced weapons and systems being installed on the warfleet. Veterans came out of retirement to share their knowledge with young sailors who would crew the new vessels. Vice Admiral Rebecca Stone had commanded humanity's largest peacekeeping fleet before retiring to write her memoirs. Now she found herself training officers to command battle groups of 100 ships or more. The scale of the new fleet required new tactics and strategies that had never been tested in actual combat. The old rules of space warfare do not apply when you have this many ships, Stone explained to her students. We are not just building a bigger fleet. We are creating a new type of military force that can remake the balance of power in the galaxy. 3 months after the destruction of New Eden, the first major battle groups began assembling at rally points throughout human space. Admiral Vasquez traveled between these gathering points, inspecting the ships and crews that would soon carry humanity's message to the Zephyrians. At the Alpha Centauri rally point, Vasquez reviewed a battle group consisting of 50 super dreadnoughts, 200 battleships, 500 cruisers, and over 1,000 smaller vessels. The ships stretched across space for hundreds of kilometers, their hulls gleaming with fresh armor and bristling with weapons. Status report, Vasquez requested from the battle group commander. All ships ready for combat operations, Admiral Foster replied. Crews are trained and eager to depart. Excellent, Vasquez said. How many more battle groups like this do we have? Foster checked his tablet computer. As of this morning, we have completed 800 similar formations. More are joining the fleet every day. Vasquez felt a grim satisfaction. 800 battle groups meant over 600,000 warships ready for combat, and they were still building more. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about military power. They were about to receive an education that would terrify them for generations. At the Proxima rally point, the newest and most advanced ships in the fleet were gathering. These vessels incorporated technology that had been developed in secret research facilities for decades. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their shields could survive the explosion of a star. Their engines could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. Captain Maria Santos, now promoted to command one of the new supercarriers, stood on her bridge and watched as fighter squadrons practiced attack runs. Each of her fighters carried more firepower than most alien battleships. She could launch 10,000 of them simultaneously. Captain, reported her flight operations officer, all squadrons report ready for combat. Very good, Santos replied. How long until the rest of the fleet arrives? The main force should be here within 2 weeks, came the answer. Then we can begin the final approach to Zephyrian space. Santos nodded and looked out at the growing fleet around her ship. In just a few months, humanity had built the largest military force in galactic history. The peaceful farmers and traders had revealed themselves to be the most capable warriors the universe had ever seen. The Zephyrians had destroyed one human colony and killed 2 million innocent people. In response, humanity was preparing to field nearly 1 million warships crewed by the finest soldiers and sailors they had ever trained. The aliens had awakened something that had been sleeping quietly among the stars. Soon, they would learn what happened when you murdered human children in their beds. The Zephyrian home system of Corax had been the center of their empire for over 1,000 years. 3 planets orbited the bright yellow star, with the homeworld of Zephyr Prime holding 8 billion souls. It was a beautiful system with crystal cities, floating gardens, and orbital palaces that showed the wealth and power of the hegemony. General Korath stood in his office in the capital city and looked out at the peaceful scene below. Citizens went about their daily lives, completely unaware that anything unusual was happening. The destruction of New Eden 3 months ago was ancient history to most Zephyrians. It had been just another minor military action against an inferior species. Sir, reported his aide, Commander Vex, we are receiving urgent messages from our border stations. Something large is approaching from human space. Korath did not look up from his paperwork. How large? 12 ships? 20? Vex checked his communication device again, his face growing pale. Sir, the reports are difficult to believe. The border stations claim they are detecting thousands of human ships. Thousands? Korath laughed. Our intelligence was right. The humans are trying to scare us with false sensor readings. Tell the border stations to check their equipment. 30 minutes later, more reports arrived, then more. Station after station along the border with human space reported massive fleets approaching. The numbers grew larger with each message. 1,000 ships, 5,000 ships, 10,000 ships. This is impossible, Korath muttered as he read the latest reports. The humans do not have 10,000 warships. They barely had a dozen patrol vessels before we destroyed their colony. Admiral Vex, commander of the Zephyrian Home Fleet, burst into Korath's office without waiting for permission. His normally calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. General, we need to mobilize the entire fleet immediately, Vex said urgently. The reports from our border are not false. Something enormous is coming this way. Korath stood up and activated the large display screen on his wall. It showed a map of Zephyrian space with all their military forces marked. The hegemony had 12,000 ships spread across 50 star systems. It was a massive fleet that had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. Show me these human ships, Korath demanded. Vex uploaded the latest sensor data to the display. What appeared made both officers step backward in shock. A wall of contacts was moving through space toward the Zephyrian home system. The computer counted them automatically. 50,000 ships, 100,000 ships, 200,000 ships. The sensors must be malfunctioning, Korath whispered, but they were not malfunctioning. At the edge of the Korak system, the first elements of humanity's response fleet began to arrive. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, Unity, and watched as her vast armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Fleet status report, she ordered. Commander Jackson consulted his screens. First wave deployment complete. 150,000 ships now in system. Second wave will arrive in 6 hours. Third wave in 12 hours, Vasquez nodded with satisfaction. The journey from human space had taken 2 weeks, with the fleet arriving in carefully timed waves to avoid crowding. Even so, the space around? The Zephyrian home system was becoming very busy. Begin standard deployment, Vasquez ordered. I want every approach to their worlds covered. Nothing gets in or out without our permission. Across the Korak system, human ships took up positions with military precision. Super dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Zephyrians had ever built moved into place around each planet. Carrier groups launched millions of fighters that spread out like clouds of angry insects. Battle groups formed defensive screens that could stop any attempt to break out on Zephyr Prime. The Planetary Defense Center erupted in chaos as their sensors tried to count the approaching human fleet. The numbers kept growing as more ships arrived. 300,000 vessels, 500,000 vessels, 700,000 vessels. This cannot be real, Defense Minister Kleck said to his staff. No species in galactic history has ever fielded such a fleet. But the evidence was undeniable. Human warships filled the space around their system like a metallic cloud. The largest ships were the size of small cities, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The smaller vessels were still larger than most Zephyrian battleships. General Korath received an emergency call from the Zephyrian High Command on the capital world. Supreme Leader Vorth appeared on his screen, his usual arrogance replaced by fear and confusion. Korath, Vorth said urgently, explain to me how the humans have nearly 1 million warships. Your intelligence report said they were a weak species, with no significant military. I do not understand it either, Supreme Leader, Korath stammered. Our spies reported normal activity in human space. There was no indication they possessed such capabilities. Well, they clearly do possess them, Vorth snapped. That fleet could destroy our entire civilization. What do they want? Before Korath could answer, every communication system on Zephyr Prime received the same message simultaneously. Admiral Vasquez's face appeared on screens across the planet, her expression cold and determined. Citizens of the Zephyrian hegemony, she began in perfect Zephyrian language. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Human Federation. 3 months ago, your military forces attacked and destroyed the peaceful colony of New Eden. 2,300,000 innocent humans were murdered without warning or mercy. The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in. Across Zephyr Prime, 8 billion aliens watched and listened as the human commander continued her broadcast. Your leaders believed they were teaching humanity a lesson about staying in our place. They believed we would be frightened by your show of force. They were wrong. Today, you will learn what happens when you murder human children in their beds. The display shifted to show the vast human fleet surrounding their system. Ship after ship filled the screen in an endless parade of military might. The Zephyrians watching could see that this was not a threat or a bluff. This was a demonstration of power beyond their wildest nightmares. 900,000 human warships now surround your home system, Vasquez continued. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy your largest cities. Together, they represent the combined industrial might of over 500 human worlds. You wanted to see what humanity is capable of when pushed too far. Look around you and learn. In the Zephyrian Command Center, General Korath stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His sensors showed human ships in every direction. They were not just surrounding the planets, they were literally blocking out the light from nearby stars. The sky above Zephyr Prime was growing dark as hundreds of thousands of human vessels moved into position. Sir, reported his communications. Officer, we are receiving surrender demands from the human fleet. They want our complete and unconditional surrender within 6 hours. Surrender? Korath said weakly. We have 12,000 ships. Surely we can fight them. Admiral Vex shook his head grimly. General, we have 12,000 ships spread across 50 star systems. They have 900,000 ships right here, right now. If we called back every vessel we have, we would still be outnumbered 75-1. The scale was simply incomprehensible. The Zephyrian military had spent centuries building their fleet of 12,000 vessels. It had seemed like an unstoppable force that could conquer any enemy. Now they faced a human armada that was 75 times larger and equipped with technology they had never seen before. What are their terms? Korath asked quietly. The communications officer read from his screen. Complete surrender of all Zephyrian military forces. Immediate withdrawal from all conquered territories. War crimes trials for those responsible for the New Eden massacre. Reparations to be paid to human survivors. And permanent human observers to ensure compliance. Korath felt his world crumbling around him. 3 months ago, he had been a conquering hero who had destroyed a human colony without losing a single ship. Now he faced the prospect of surrender to the very species he had thought was weak and defenseless. On Zephyr Prime's surface, citizens looked up at the sky and saw something that terrified them. The familiar stars were disappearing one by one as human ships moved into position. The sky was literally darkening as the massive fleet blocked out the light from space. Children asked their parents why the stars were going away. Adults had no answers that would not frighten them even more. The sight of nearly 1 million alien warships surrounding their homeworld was beyond anything in their worst nightmares. Supreme Leader Vorth called an emergency session of the Zephyrian High Command. The most powerful leaders in their civilization gathered in the Great Council chamber and stared at the tactical displays showing the human fleet. Options, Vorth demanded of his military advisors. We could attempt to fight, suggested one general hesitantly. Our ships are of good quality, even if we are outnumbered. 75-1 is not just outnumbered, Admiral Vex replied. It is annihilation. We would be destroyed completely, and our worlds would be left defenseless. What about asking other species for help? Suggested another advisor. Who would help us against a fleet that large? Vorth asked bitterly. Every alien government in the galaxy is probably reconsidering their relationship with humanity right now. Indeed, across the galaxy, alien civilizations were receiving reports about the human fleet at Zephyr Prime. The news spread quickly through diplomatic channels. trade networks, and intelligence services. Species that had considered humans to be minor players in galactic politics suddenly realized they had been catastrophically wrong. The Altarian Republic, which had been planning to demand tribute from human colonies, immediately canceled their military preparations and sent messages of friendship to Earth, the vegan empire, which had been ignoring human requests for trade. Agreements suddenly became very interested in negotiations. Even the ancient Andromedans, who had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers, sent observers to watch the events at Zephyr Prime. They had not seen such a massive military deployment since the great wars of their distant past. Back in the Korak system, Admiral Vasquez received reports from her fleet commanders. The deployment was proceeding perfectly. Every human ship was in position, and their sensors were monitoring every Zephyrian vessel in the system. "Admiral," reported Captain Santos from her carrier, "we have detected movement from the Zephyrian home fleet. They appear to be taking defensive positions around their primary orbital stations." "Let them," Vasquez replied. "We are not here to conquer their worlds. We are here to demonstrate that attacking human civilians carries a price they cannot afford to pay." The Admiral opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian leadership. General Korath's face appeared on her screen, looking defeated and exhausted. "General," Vasquez said calmly, "you have 4 hours remaining to surrender. I suggest you use that time wisely." "Admiral," Korath said desperately, "surely we can negotiate. The destruction of your colony was regrettable. Perhaps we can reach some arrangement that avoids bloodshed." Vasquez's expression did not change. "There is nothing to negotiate. Your forces committed genocide against innocent civilians. The only question now is whether you will surrender peacefully or force us to take your surrender by other means." "You would destroy entire worlds for revenge?" Korath asked. "We would prefer not to," Vasquez replied. "But make no mistake, if you force us to fight, we will win. And when we do, the Zephyrian hegemony will cease to exist. Your choice is simple: surrender now and face justice, or resist and face annihilation." The communication ended, leaving Korath staring at a blank screen. Around him, his staff waited for orders that he was not sure he could give. Outside, the sky continued to darken as more human ships took position. In the Great Council chamber, Supreme Leader Vorth made the hardest decision of his long life. The Zephyrian hegemony had ruled their part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. They had believed themselves to be the strongest military power in their region of space. Now they faced a force so overwhelming that resistance was not just futile, it was insane. The humans had built a fleet larger than anything in galactic history. They had revealed military capabilities that no intelligence service had detected. They had shown that beneath their peaceful exterior lay something that could literally darken the stars. "Send the message," Vorth said quietly to his communications officer. "We surrender." Admiral Vasquez received the Zephyrian surrender with grim satisfaction. Justice for New Eden would be served, but it brought no joy. The dead colonists would not return to life. The murdered children would not grow up to have families of their own. But the galaxy would remember this day. They would remember that humanity could be peaceful neighbors and generous trading partners. They would also remember that attacking human civilians brought swift and overwhelming retaliation. The stars around Zephyr Prime remained dark, blocked by nearly 1 million human warships. The Zephyrians had learned their lesson about humanity's true capabilities. Soon every species in the galaxy would learn it too. The surrender ceremony took place on Admiral Vasquez's flagship Unity in the shadow of 900,000 human warships. General Korath and the entire Zephyrian High Command were brought aboard under heavy guard. They walked through corridors lined with human marines whose faces showed no emotion, only cold professionalism. Korath had expected to meet savage warriors driven by thoughts of revenge. Instead, he found himself facing Admiral Vasquez in a simple conference room with white walls and basic furniture. The human commander sat quietly at a metal table, reviewing documents on a tablet computer. She looked more like a teacher than a conqueror. "Please sit," Vasquez said without looking up. Her voice was calm and businesslike, as if she were discussing a shipping contract rather than the surrender of an entire civilization. Korath and his officers took their seats across from the admiral. Through the room's windows, they could see endless rows of human battleships stretching into the distance. The sight reminded them that they were completely at the mercy of their former victims. "The terms are simple," Vasquez began, finally looking up from her tablet. "First, all Zephyrian military forces will surrender immediately. Your ships will be impounded and your crews interned until they can be processed. Second, all territories conquered by the hegemony will be granted immediate independence. Third, those responsible for war crimes will face trial. Fourth, reparations will be paid to the families of New Eden's victims." She paused and fixed Korath with a steady gaze. "Finally, the Zephyrian military will be permanently disbanded. You will be allowed to keep only a small defense force suitable for police work and disaster relief." Korath felt his throat go dry. "Admiral, you are essentially demanding the end of our civilization. Without our military, we cannot defend ourselves from other threats. You should have thought of that before you murdered 2 million innocent people," Vasquez replied coldly. "However, I am not unreasonable. Humanity will guarantee the security of Zephyrian space. Any species that attacks you will answer to us." The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians were being placed under human protection whether they wanted it or not. They would become, in effect, a client state of the Human Federation. Their 1,000-year empire was ending not with a battle, but with a signature on a surrender. Document. Supreme Leader Vorth signed the papers with a trembling hand. As he wrote his name, he officially ended the Zephyrian hegemony and placed his people under human authority. The ceremony was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy, ensuring that every species would see the consequences of attacking human civilians within hours of the surrender. Human administrators began arriving at Zephyrian worlds. They came not as conquerors but as bureaucrats carrying clipboards and legal documents. Their job was to oversee the transition from military empire to peaceful civilization. Dr. Sarah Chun found herself appointed as administrator for the Zephyrian agricultural sector. Her experience on New Eden made her uniquely qualified to help transform their war economy into something that could feed their people. She worked 18-hour days helping Zephyrian farmers convert military factories into food processing plants. "We need to increase grain production by 40% to feed the populations you were keeping as slaves," Chun explained to a group of Zephyrian agricultural officials. "Here are the crop rotation schedules that will maximize your harvest yields." The Zephyrians listened carefully to the human who was helping them survive their transition to peace. Many of them had expected the humans to be cruel victors who would enslave or eliminate their former enemies. Instead, they found administrators who seemed genuinely interested in helping them build a better society. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of humanity's overwhelming victory was reshaping interstellar politics. Species that had been planning aggressive actions against human colonies suddenly discovered urgent reasons to pursue diplomatic solutions instead. The Altarian Republic had been preparing to invade 3 human farming worlds that they claimed were in disputed territory. When they learned about the 900,000 ship fleet at Zephyr Prime, the Republic's War Council held an emergency meeting. "Cancel all military operations immediately," ordered Chancellor Vex. "Send our best diplomats to negotiate a peaceful resolution with the humans." "But Chancellor," protested General Thane, "we have been planning this invasion for 2 years. Our forces are already in position." "Have you seen the reports from Zephyr Prime?" Vex asked incredulously. "The humans have more ships than we have soldiers. If we attack their colonies, they will send that fleet here next. Do you want to explain to our people why we provoked the destruction of our civilization?" Similar conversations were taking place in government centers across the galaxy. The Vegan Empire immediately offered to sign favorable trade agreements with humanity. The Centauri Alliance sent gifts and messages of friendship. Even the proud Andromedans requested formal diplomatic meetings. Ambassador, Patricia Williams found herself busier than she had ever been in her 30-year diplomatic career. Her office on Earth was flooded with requests for meetings from alien governments that had previously ignored human attempts at communication. "How many more requests came in today?" Williams asked her assistant. 47 new requests for trade agreements," came the reply. 12 requests for mutual defense pacts. "And the Regelian Federation wants to discuss joining the human sphere of influence voluntarily." Williams shook her head in amazement. 6 months ago, these same governments had treated humanity as a minor nuisance on the galactic stage. Now they were practically begging for human friendship and protection. President Thompson addressed the Human Federation Council 6 months after the surrender of the Zephyrian hegemony. Representatives from all human worlds gathered to hear about the new galactic situation that their overwhelming military response had created. "Citizens of humanity," Thompson began, "we have achieved justice for New Eden, but more importantly, we have established a new principle in galactic affairs. Any species that commits genocide against human civilians will face the full weight of human civilization." The president gestured to a display showing the current deployment of human forces. The massive fleet had not been disbanded after the Zephyrian surrender. Instead, it had been reorganized into permanent battle groups stationed throughout human space and beyond. "The New Eden Memorial Fleet will remain active as a reminder to the galaxy," Thompson continued. "We are peaceful people who prefer trade and cooperation. But we are also capable of defending ourselves and our allies with force that can darken the very stars." The Memorial Fleet consisted of 200,000 ships permanently assigned to patrol human space and respond to threats. Another 300,000 ships were stationed at key points throughout the galaxy, serving as a deterrent to potential aggressors. The remaining 400,000 ships were held in reserve, ready to deploy wherever they might be needed. Admiral Vasquez remained in command of this unprecedented force. Her flagship Unity had become a mobile capital that could project human power across vast distances. She spent her time visiting human colonies in allied worlds, ensuring that the galaxy understood humanity's commitment to peace through strength. The trials of Zephyrian war criminals began 1 year after New Eden's destruction. General Korath and his staff were brought before a special tribunal that included judges from multiple species. The evidence against them was overwhelming: satellite recordings of the massacre, communications intercepts showing their deliberate targeting of civilians, and testimony from the few human survivors. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes served as the chief prosecutor in the trials. She had lost friends on New Eden and was determined to see justice done. Her opening statement was broadcast across the galaxy, ensuring that every species heard the details of what the Zephyrians had done. "The defendants systematically murdered 2,300,000 innocent civilians," Hayes told the tribunal. "They targeted schools, hospitals, and refugee ships. They showed no mercy to children or elderly. This was not war, it was genocide of the worst kind." Korath was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote human penal colony. His officers received similar sentences. The trials served as a warning to other species about the consequences of attacking human civilians. The transformation of Zephyrian society proceeded remarkably smoothly under human supervision. The former slave worlds were granted independence and provided with human advisors to help establish democratic governments. The Zephyrian homeworld itself was restructured as a peaceful republic with term limits and civil rights protections. Many Zephyrians initially resented their human overseers, but this attitude changed as they saw the benefits of the new system. Food production increased dramatically under human agricultural techniques. Medical care improved with access to human technology. Educational opportunities expanded as human teachers shared their knowledge. Young Zephyrians who had grown up during the transition period often expressed gratitude for the changes. Kex, a Zephyrian student who had been a child during the war, wrote in her school essay, "Before the humans came, my people lived in fear of our own government. Now we are free to choose our own leaders and speak our minds." The humans showed U.S. that strength should protect the weak, not exploit them. The New Eden Memorial was built on the site of the destroyed colony 5 years after the massacre. It consisted of simple stone walls inscribed with the names of every person who had died in the attack. At the center stood a statue showing a human family looking up at the stars, representing humanity's peaceful expansion into the galaxy. Sarah Chun brought her sons to the memorial's dedication ceremony. Tommy and Mike, now teenagers, placed flowers at the base of their father's name on the memorial wall. They had grown up knowing that their family's loss had changed the course of galactic history. "Do you think Dad would be proud of what we accomplished?" Tommy asked his mother. Sarah looked up at the statue and thought about her husband who had died defending their farm. "I think he would be proud that we made sure no other family will suffer what we suffered. And I think he would be amazed that humanity found the strength to build something good from such terrible loss." The memorial became a pilgrimage site for humans from across the galaxy, but it also attracted visitors from other species who wanted to understand the event that had reshaped galactic politics. Alien children learned about the price of aggression by reading the names on those walls. 10 years after New Eden's destruction, the galaxy had settled into a new pattern of international relations. Humanity had become the dominant military power, but they used that power primarily as a deterrent. The massive memorial fleet patrolled trade routes, protected weak species from exploitation, and ensured that no other genocides occurred. Trade flourished under the new system. Human agricultural techniques helped feed hungry populations across the galaxy. Human medical knowledge saved lives on dozens of worlds. Human teachers shared educational methods that improved literacy and scientific understanding throughout known space. But everyone remembered the lesson of New Eden. Carved into the memorial walls were the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto: "We are a peaceful people. Do not test our capacity for war." Admiral Vasquez, now in her 70s, stood on the Bridge of Unity and watched as another patrol fleet departed for the outer reaches of the galaxy. The ships moved with the confidence of a force that had never been challenged since that day at Zephyr Prime when they had darkened the stars. Her aide, now Admiral Jackson, approached with the daily intelligence reports. "Any threats to human colonies today?" he asked. "None," Vasquez replied with satisfaction. "There have been no serious threats to human civilians in over 5 years. The galaxy has learned to respect our strength and appreciate our peaceful intentions." She looked out at the stars that her ships protected and thought about the farmers and families living safely on hundreds of human worlds. They slept peacefully because the galaxy knew that humanity would never again allow the massacre of innocents. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humanity about staying in their place. Instead, they had taught the galaxy that humanity's place was wherever justice and peace needed protection. The 900,000 ships that had once darkened the stars above Zephyr Prime now served as guardians of a new galactic order based on respect for life and the rule of law. New Eden was gone, but its legacy lived on in the safer, more just galaxy that had emerged from its ashes. The children who played on human colonies across the stars would never know the fear that had once threatened their peaceful worlds, and if anyone ever again threatened those children, they would face the full fury of a species that had proven it could marshal the power to darken the very heavens themselves.
The big room was full of angry voices. 12 different alien races sat around a huge table made of some kind of blue crystal. Each race had their own section, with fancy chairs and glowing screens. The room was on a space station that floated between 3 stars. This was where the most powerful beings in the galaxy came to make decisions. Admiral Kethvar was mad, really mad. He was from a race called the Zephyrians. They looked like tall blue people made of living crystal. When light hit them, they sparkled like diamonds. But right now, Kethvar was not sparkling nicely. He was glowing red with anger. "We have talked about this for too long," Kethvar shouted. His voice sounded like breaking glass. "The humans have broken our rules. They built mining stations in the Kepler Nebula. That area belongs to no one. but the humans went there anyway, without asking anyone. The other aliens nodded their heads. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had fur or scales. A few looked almost human, but with strange eyes or extra limbs. All of them were much older than the human race. All of them were much more powerful than humans. Or so they thought. The humans think they can do whatever they want, said General Vexthor from the Drakmari Imperium. The Drakmari looked like huge lizards that walked on two legs. They had been warriors for millions of years. We should teach them a lesson they will never forget. I agree, said a voice that sounded like music. This came from Ambassador Lyra of the Luminari. The Luminari were made of pure light energy. They were usually peaceful, but even they were tired of human behavior. The humans have been pushing boundaries for years. First they wanted more trade routes. Then they asked for bigger colonies. Now they take whatever they want. At the far end of the room sat a small table. It was much smaller than the others. Only 3 humans sat there. They looked tiny compared to the giant aliens around them. The lead human was a woman with short black hair and calm brown eyes. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. Sarah had been listening to the complaints for 2 hours. She did not look scared or worried. She just sat quietly, taking notes on a simple tablet computer. The aliens thought this was strange. Most races would be terrified if 12 galactic empires were angry with them. Ambassador Chen, called out the council speaker. The speaker was a tall, thin alien with 4 arms and purple skin. The council has made its decision. Your people must leave the Kepler Nebula within 72 hours. You will receive no payment for the work you have done there. Sarah stood up slowly. She was much shorter than any of the aliens, but somehow she did not look small. The mining operation was built in empty space, she said in a calm voice. Our star maps show that no one claimed that area. We followed all the rules when we went there. Your star maps are wrong. Kethvar slammed his crystal fist on the table. The sound rang through the room like a bell. That nebula is in neutral space, but it is too close to our borders. We do not want humans there. The humans are getting too big for their boots, said another alien voice. This came from Queen Zara of the Vorthan Collective. The Vorthans had huge brains that bulged out of their skulls. They were known as the smartest race in the galaxy. Your species is very young. You only have 50 billion people spread across 12 worlds. We have been traveling the stars since before your planet had life on it. Sarah nodded politely. That is true. We are a young race. She made another note on her tablet. Could you tell me more about your military strength? I find it very interesting. The aliens looked at each other with surprise. Why would a human want to know about their weapons when she was in so much trouble? Admiral Kethvar was happy to brag. The Zephyrian hegemony controls 1,000 star systems. Our grand fleet has 800 warships. Each ship can destroy a city with one shot. Our smallest weapons can crack moons in half. Very impressive, Sarah said, still taking notes. What about the rest of you? The other aliens could not resist showing off. General Vexthor stood up, making himself look even bigger. The Drakmari Imperium has conquered 47 different worlds in the last century. Our war fleets have never lost a battle. We have weapons that can burn the atmosphere off a planet. The Luminari Confederation prefers peace, said Ambassador Lyra, but we have defense fleets that can move faster than light itself. Our energy weapons can cut through any armor ever made. Queen Zara's big brain pulsed with pride. The Vorthan Collective knows everything that happens in this galaxy. Our spy networks reach into every government. Our computer systems can hack any defense grid in minutes. Sarah kept writing down everything they said. Fascinating. Please continue. For the next hour, every alien empire bragged about their military power. They told her about planet-killer weapons, fleets with thousands of ships, and armies that had crushed entire civilizations. They wanted to scare the human ambassador. They wanted her to understand how helpless her people were, but Sarah just kept taking notes. Sometimes she asked questions like, how many ships in your main fleet? Or where do you keep your weapons factories? The aliens thought she was just curious, so they kept giving her information. Finally, Admiral Kethvar got tired of talking. Do you understand now, human? Your entire race could not fight even one of our empires. We are giving you a chance to leave the nebula peacefully. Take it. Sarah finished writing and put her tablet away. She looked around the room at all the angry alien faces. Then she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made smart people feel nervous, even though they could not say why. Thank you for the intelligence briefing, Sarah said quietly. I will make sure this information gets to the right people back home. Intelligence briefing. Queen Zara's brain pulsed faster. What do you mean? You just told me the exact size and location of all your military forces, Sarah explained patiently. You told me about your weapons, your tactics, and your weaknesses. This will be very useful. The room went quiet. The aliens suddenly realized they had been talking too much, but it was too late to take back their words. Admiral Kethvar tried to regain control. "It does not matter what you know. You cannot fight all of us. Your people will submit to our demands, or we will remove you from the nebula by force." Sarah gathered her papers and stood up. "I believe this meeting is over." She started walking toward the door, followed by the other two humans. "Oh, and Admiral Kethvar, you said we have 72 hours to evacuate. I will pass that message along to my superiors." "Good," Kethvar shouted after her, "and tell them that the Zephyrian Grand Fleet will come to make sure you leave." Sarah paused at the door and looked back. "I will tell them to expect you." Her smile got a little wider. "They will be very interested to meet you." After the humans left, the alien empires continued their meeting. They made plans to divide up the human colonies after they conquered them. They argued about who would get which planets, and who would get the most slaves. They were so excited about their upcoming victory that none of them noticed something important. Ambassador Sarah Chen had been taking notes the entire time, but she had not been writing in English. The symbols on her tablet were something else entirely, something that looked almost like alien writing, but was not from any race in the Galactic Council. If they had been able to read those symbols, the aliens might have been worried. The notes said things like primary fleet staging area confirmed, and defense grid weak points identified, and recommended strike pattern full sterilization. But the aliens could not read the writing. They were too busy planning their easy victory over the weak humans. They did not know that humanity had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. They did not know that the real human military had been watching and preparing in the dark spaces between stars. They did not know that their easy victory was about to become their worst nightmare. In 72 hours, the Zephyrian Grand Fleet would jump into the Kepler Nebula, expecting to find scared humans running away. Instead, they would find something that had been waiting for them in the darkness, something that had been built in secret, while the galaxy laughed at human weakness. The aliens thought they knew everything about humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The countdown had begun. Deep under the surface of Earth's moon, a man sat in a room full of glowing screens. The room was bigger than a football stadium, but it was buried so far down that no alien spy satellite could ever find it. Director Marcus Webb had been waiting 30 years for this day. He was an old man now, with grey hair and tired eyes, but those eyes were sharp and dangerous. The screens around him showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked alien fleets. Blue lines showed trade routes. Yellow triangles marked alien military bases. Webb knew where every important ship was at any moment. He knew what weapons they carried and how fast they could travel. The aliens thought they were watching humanity, but humans had been watching them much more carefully. Webb's assistant, a young woman named Lisa Park, ran into the room holding a tablet. "Sir, Ambassador Chen's report just came in. The aliens gave us exactly what we expected. Full military breakdowns of all 12 empires." Webb smiled for the first time in months. "Excellent. Send the activation signal to all sleeper cells. It's time to wake up the real military." All across human space, people who looked like normal civilians got messages on their personal communicators. The messages were very short, just a few numbers and letters that looked like grocery lists or appointment reminders. But these people knew what the codes meant. They had been waiting years to receive them. Dr. Elena Vasquez was working in her laboratory on a space station near Proxima Centauri. She was supposed to be studying alien plant samples. The other scientists thought she was just a biology expert. When her communicator beeped, she looked at the message and nodded quietly. "I need to check something in the lower levels," she told her research partner. "Keep working on those samples." Elena took an elevator down past the normal laboratory levels. She went down past the crew quarters and the storage areas. She went down to a level that was not on any station blueprints. At the bottom, she put her hand on a scanner that had been hidden behind a fake wall panel. The wall slid open. Behind it was a control room filled with weapon systems that could destroy entire planets. The research station was not really a research station. It was one of humanity's hidden war platforms, disguised to look peaceful and scientific. Elena sat down at the control panel and began typing commands. Around the station, fake hull plates slid away to reveal massive energy cannons. The gravity generators that powered the station's artificial gravity were really the power source for weapons that could crack moons. The communication array that talked to other research stations was actually a targeting system that could lock onto ships from 3-star systems away. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, a man named Tom Harrison was working in his cornfield when his communicator beeped. Tom looked like a simple farmer. He wore old clothes and had dirt under his fingernails. The aliens who occasionally visited his planet thought humans were cute for still growing their own food instead of using advanced technology. Tom read the message and put his communicator away. He walked slowly toward his old red barn, whistling a farming song. But when he got to the barn, he pressed his thumb against what looked like a nail in the wooden door. A hidden scanner read his fingerprint and confirmed his identity. The ground under the barn split open like a giant mouth.
Inside was a hangar that went down hundreds of meters into the planet's crust. 12 ships sat waiting in the darkness. They were not like the slow cargo ships that aliens had seen humans use. These ships were black and sleek, with curves that seemed to bend light around them. They looked like dangerous predators that had been sleeping and were now ready to hunt. Tom climbed into the pilot seat of the lead ship. His hands moved over controls that were far more advanced than anything the aliens thought humans possessed. The ship's engines made no sound as they powered up. Advanced stealth technology made the ships invisible to any sensors the galaxy's empires had ever built. All over human space, the same thing was happening. Fake research stations revealed themselves as battle platforms. Hidden factories in asteroid belts began producing ships at impossible speeds. Ordinary-looking human civilians shed their disguises and became the crew of the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. The aliens had been watching humanity for 30 years. They had counted every human ship, mapped every human base, and catalogued every human weapon. But they had only been seeing what humans wanted them to see. The real human military had been built in the empty spaces between star systems, in the hearts of dead stars, and in dimensions that most alien races did not even know existed. Admiral Rebecca Stone sat in the command center of the HSS Invisible Hand, a ship so advanced that it existed partially outside normal space-time. The ship was parked in the middle of an alien trade route, but no alien sensors could detect it. Admiral Stone had been watching Zephyrian fleet movements for 15 years. She knew their tactics better than their own commanders did. "Ma'am," said her tactical officer, "sleeper activation confirmed across all sectors. The fleet is ready to reveal itself." Admiral Stone nodded. "Signal all units. Begin Phase 2 of Operation Looking Glass. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." In star systems across human space, the evacuation began. Alien spy networks watched with satisfaction as human transport ships left the Kepler Nebula. The ships looked full of scared civilians running away from the threat of alien military action. Alien commanders congratulated themselves on an easy victory without firing a shot, but the ships were not full of civilians. Most of them were completely empty, flying on autopilot. The few humans aboard were not scared colonists. They were the last of humanity's intelligence agents, finally coming home after decades of pretending to be ordinary people living among alien populations. Agent Sarah Kim had been living on the Zephyrian homeworld for 12 years. Everyone thought she was a human student studying crystal architecture, but Sarah was really mapping every military facility on the planet. She knew where the Zephyrians kept their backup fleets and how to access their defense systems. When she got the evacuation signal, she smiled and boarded the last transport off the planet. As her ship left Zephyrian space, Sarah sent a final data packet to her handlers. The packet contained the access codes to every Zephyrian military computer system. It also contained detailed maps of their secret bases and the personal files of every high-ranking officer in their military. The Zephyrians had no idea that their most sensitive secrets were now in human hands. Agent David Wong had been living among the Drakmari for 8 years. The lizard-like warriors thought he was a human engineer who helped maintain their civilian technology. David was really studying their military equipment and learning how their weapons worked. He had even helped design some of their newer ships, making sure to include hidden weaknesses that only humans would know about. When David's evacuation signal came, he was working on a Drakmari battlecruiser. He quickly uploaded a virus into the ship's computer system. The virus would spread to every ship in the Drakmari fleet when they linked their computers for battle coordination. At the right moment, the virus would disable their weapons and shields, leaving them helpless. All across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human agents, who had been living secret lives for decades, finally revealed their true purpose. They had not been refugees seeking new homes or traders looking for profit. They had been intelligence operatives gathering information and preparing for this exact moment. The aliens thought they had been cleverly watching humanity, but humanity had been inside their governments, their militaries, and their most secret facilities for years. Every alien battle plan had been copied. Every alien weapon had been studied. Every alien leader had been carefully observed and analyzed. Director Webb watched the evacuation reports come in from his command center under the moon. Each report brought more intelligence about alien capabilities and more confirmation that the human agents had successfully completed their missions. "Sir," said Lisa Park, "we're receiving final intelligence packets from all sectors. The last sleeper agents are coming home." Webb nodded. "Good, and our response to Admiral Kethvar's ultimatum? Ambassador Chen's ship is already in position at the Kepler Nebula. She's waiting for the Zephyrian fleet to arrive." "Just her ship?" Webb asked. Lisa smiled. "Well, her ship and the 300 vessels of the hidden fleet that have been waiting in stealth position around the nebula for the past 6 months. Webb leaned back in his chair and looked at the galaxy map. Soon the aliens would learn the truth about humanity. They would discover that their primitive neighbors had technology that made their own weapons look like stone tools. They would realize that humans had been playing a game of deception that lasted for 3 decades. The aliens thought they were about to teach humanity a lesson about respecting galactic power. Instead, they were about to receive the most shocking education of their long lives. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet was already gathering for their attack on the Kepler Nebula. 800 ships, the pride of their military, were preparing to show the upstart humans their place in the galactic order. Admiral Cuthvar was confident this would be the easiest military operation of his career. He had no idea that every move his fleet made was being watched by human observers. He did not know that his secret attack plan had been in human hands for weeks. He could not imagine that his mighty fleet was flying into a trap that had been 30 years in the making. In 72 hours, the real war would begin, but it would not be the war the aliens expected. Exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum, the Zephyrian Grand Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler Nebula. Admiral Cuthvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Throne, watching his battle screens with satisfaction. 800 ships spread out behind him in perfect formation. Each ship sparkled like a blue diamond in the starlight. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we are detecting one human vessel near the abandoned mining stations. It appears to be Ambassador Chen's diplomatic ship." Cuthvar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "One ship? The humans are even more foolish than I thought. Open a communication channel." On the main screen, Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared. She was sitting calmly in her ship's command chair, looking as peaceful as she had during the council meeting. Behind her, human crew members worked quietly at their stations. "Admiral Cuthvar," Sarah said with a polite smile, "you arrived exactly on time, very punctual." "Human," Cuthvar growled, "you were ordered to evacuate this area. Why are you still here?" "Oh, we did evacuate," Sarah replied. "All the civilian miners and their families are safely away, but you said you wanted to see what human military power really looks like. I thought it would be rude not to give you a demonstration." Cuthvar's crystal face twisted with anger. "You dare mock the Zephyrian Grand Fleet? You have one small ship against 800 battle cruisers." "Actually," Sarah said, checking something on her tablet, "according to my count, you have 796 ships. You lost 4 to mechanical problems during your jump sequence. Your engines are not as reliable as you think they are." The Admiral's tactical officer quickly checked his senses. "Sir, she's right. We did lose 4 ships to engine failure during hyperspace transit." Cuthvar felt a chill run through his crystal body. How could the humans know about mechanical failures that had just happened? But he pushed the fear away. 796 ships were still more than enough to destroy one human vessel. "It does not matter," he shouted. "Prepare to fire all weapons." Sarah's smile grew wider. "Admiral, before you do something you might regret, would you like to know what happened to your advanced scout ships?" "What advanced scout ships?" Cuthvar demanded. "The 12 ships you sent ahead 3 days ago to watch the nebula, the ones that stopped reporting yesterday." Sarah tilted her head to one side. "You didn't notice they went silent?" Cuthvar's tactical officer was frantically checking his communication logs. "Sir, the advanced scouts did stop reporting 26 hours ago. We assumed it was just communication interference from the nebula. Allow me to show you what really happened," Sarah said. The space around her ship suddenly filled with light. Massive energy beams lanced out from positions all throughout the nebula. But these were not weapons firing at targets. They were spotlights, illuminating objects that had been hidden in the cosmic dust and gas. What the Zephyrians had thought were natural formations in the nebula were revealed to be enormous battle stations. Structures the size of small moons hung in space, bristling with weapons that looked like they could crack planets in half. The mining stations that the humans had supposedly abandoned were still there, but now they showed their true nature as heavily armed fortresses. But most terrifying of all were the ships. Hundreds of them materialized out of nothing as their stealth fields deactivated. They had been there all along, invisible and waiting. The human fleet that appeared was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships moved with impossible grace, flowing through space like living creatures rather than mechanical vessels. "Your advanced scouts encountered our perimeter defense," Sarah explained calmly. "They were disabled and their crews were taken prisoner. The ships themselves are being studied by our engineers. Zephyrian crystal technology is quite interesting." Admiral Cuthvar stared at his screens in shock. His sensors were going crazy, trying to count and classify the human forces that had appeared around him. The numbers kept changing as more ships decloaked, and more weapon platforms came online. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence showed you had less than 200 ships in your entire fleet." "Admiral," Sarah said patiently, "what you observed for 30 years was our merchant marine, our cargo ships, passenger transports, and light patrol vessels. This is the human defense force. We have been preparing for this meeting for a very long time." The human ships began to move. They did not lumber through space like the massive Zephyrian vessels. Instead, they danced between the alien formations with impossible speed and precision. Their movements were so smooth and coordinated that they looked like a school of fish swimming through water. "How?" Cuthvar managed to ask. "How can your ships move like that?" "We learned a lot by watching your military exercises over the years," Sarah replied. "Your tactics are very predictable. Your formations follow the same patterns every time. Your captains always react the same way to the same situations. We have been studying you for 3 decades, Admiral. We know how you fight better than you do." The human weapons opened fire, but these were not the simple energy beams or projectile weapons that other races used. The human weapons seemed to bend space itself. reaching across vast distances to strike targets with impossible accuracy. Zephyrian ships that thought they were safely out of range suddenly found themselves under attack from weapons that ignored the normal rules of physics.
Shields up. All ships return fire, Kethvar ordered. The Zephyrian fleet tried to respond, but they found themselves fighting an enemy that was always one step ahead. Human ships would appear behind their formations, fire devastating volleys, and then vanish before the Zephyrians could target them. The human vessels moved through space in 3 dimensions, sometimes seeming to exist in 2 places at once. Captain Zeth Mora, commanding the battle cruiser Shining Edge, watched his tactical display with growing horror. "Sir, I cannot get a target lock on any human vessel. They are moving too fast, and their technology is scrambling our sensors. Use visual targeting," Kethvar commanded. "Fire where you see them." But even visual targeting failed. The human ships seemed to bend light around themselves, making it hard to tell exactly where they were. When Zephyrian weapons fired at what looked like a human ship, they often hit empty space. The humans were using technology that made them appear to be somewhere they were not. Worse, the human weapons could track Zephyrian ships through hyperspace itself. When Captain Veltus tried to jump his destroyer to a safe distance, human missiles followed him through the jump and destroyed his ship the moment he returned to normal space. The humans had somehow learned to fight in dimensions that most races did not even know existed. "Admiral," reported his communications officer, "we are receiving a general message from all human vessels." "Put it on speakers," Kethvar ordered. A calm male voice filled the bridge of every Zephyrian ship. "Attention Zephyrian fleet. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Force. You are outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely surrounded. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." "Never," Kethvar shouted. "The Zephyrian hegemony does not surrender." "We were hoping you would say that," Admiral Webb replied. "All human vessels, you are cleared for full engagement. Show them what we have learned." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet, which had conquered 47 worlds and never lost a major engagement, was systematically torn apart by an enemy they had underestimated. Human ships moved through their formations like ghosts, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before return fire could touch them. The human weapons were terrifying in their precision. Instead of trying to destroy Zephyrian ships completely, they targeted specific systems. Engines were disabled with surgical strikes. Weapon systems were fried by energy beams that somehow passed through shields without damaging anything else. Life support systems were shut down by computer viruses that infected Zephyrian networks through their own sensor arrays. Captain Morthak, commanding the heavy cruiser Diamond Fist, found his ship completely helpless within minutes of the engagement starting. All weapons offline, engines down. How are they doing this? His answer came when human boarding pods appeared next to his ship. The pods had not been fired from any visible launcher. They simply materialized out of empty space and attached themselves to his hull. The boarding parties that emerged were not wearing normal spacesuits. They moved through the vacuum of space as easily as walking on a planet's surface. "Sir," his security chief reported, "the humans are cutting through our hull with some kind of tool that ignores our armor completely. They will be inside the ship in less than 2 minutes." All across the battlefield, the same scene played out. Zephyrian ships found themselves boarded by human troops, who seemed to have technology from science fiction stories. The human soldiers moved through ship corridors without making sound. Their weapons could stun alien crew members without permanent harm, or they could cut through the strongest armor like it was paper. But the most shocking discovery came when the human soldiers removed their helmets. Underneath were faces that looked completely human. No strange technology or alien modifications, just ordinary people who somehow possessed capabilities that made them seem like supernatural beings. Admiral Kethvar watched his proud fleet fall apart around him. In 18 minutes, 796 ships had been reduced to helpless hulks drifting in space. Not one human vessel had been destroyed or even seriously damaged. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with a shaking voice, "all ships report weapons and engines offline. We have no combat capability remaining." A new voice came over the communication system. It was Ambassador Sarah Chen, still sitting calmly in her ship. "Admiral Kethvar, this demonstration is now complete. Your ships and crews are unharmed, but completely disabled. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first minute of combat, but we chose not to. Do you understand why?" Kethvar's crystal body was dim with shock and fear. "Why?" he whispered. "Because we are not like the other races you have conquered," Sarah explained. "We do not enjoy causing unnecessary death. We prefer to solve problems with the minimum amount of violence necessary. Your fleet came here to teach humanity a lesson about respecting galactic power."
Instead, you have learned a lesson about underestimating your enemies. This is impossible, Kethvar said. Our intelligence networks are the best in the galaxy. How could we miss military technology this advanced? You missed it because we wanted you to miss it, Sarah replied. For 30 years, we have shown you exactly what we wanted you to see. Simple cargo ships, basic mining equipment, primitive communication systems. We let you think we were weak, because weak enemies are not watched as carefully as strong ones. Human technicians were already boarding Zephyrian ships to begin repairs. But they were not just fixing the damage from the battle. They were also installing monitoring equipment that would let humans track every Zephyrian vessel for years to come. Your ships will be repaired and you will be allowed to return home, Sarah continued. But Admiral Kethvar, you will carry a message to the Galactic Council. Humanity is no longer hiding. The galaxy now knows what we are truly capable of. We hope this knowledge will lead to more peaceful relations in the future. Kethvar's flagship was the last ship to be repaired. As his engines came back online, he realized that his entire worldview had been shattered. The Zephyrian hegemony was not the supreme power he had thought it was. Humanity had been playing a game that was far more complex than any alien race had imagined. As his battered fleet limped away from the Kepler Nebula, Admiral Kethvar carried with him the most important intelligence report in galactic history. The humans were not the weak, primitive species that everyone believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous. They were patient. They were smart. And they had been preparing for war while everyone else thought they were learning to be civilized. The galaxy was about to change forever. News of the Kepler Nebula disaster spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Admiral Kethvar's battered fleet limped back to Zephyrian space, carrying with them a story that no one wanted to believe. The mighty Zephyrian Grand Fleet, which had never lost a battle, had been completely destroyed by a human force that appeared out of nowhere. But the real shock came when the battle records were analyzed. Every Zephyrian ship had been recording the engagement, and the data they brought back painted a terrifying picture. Human technology was not just advanced, it was so far beyond anything the galaxy possessed that it seemed like magic. General Vexthor of the Drakmari Imperium was in his war room studying the battle footage when his aide brought him urgent news. "Sir, our communication networks have been compromised. We are receiving detailed intelligence reports about our own military operations." "What do you mean?" Vexthor growled, his lizard eyes narrowing. "Someone has sent us copies of our own secret battle plans, sir, plans that were stored in our most secure computer systems. They also sent us the personal files of every officer in our military, including yours." The general looked at the data files that had appeared on his personal computer. They contained information that should have been impossible for outsiders to access, detailed maps of every Drakmari military base, the exact locations of their hidden fleets, even the private communications between Drakmari commanders. At the bottom of the files was a simple message: "We have been watching you for a very long time. We know everything about your military capabilities. We hope this knowledge will encourage peaceful relations between our species." The message was signed by Director Marcus Webb of Human Intelligence Services. Vexthor felt his blood run cold. If humans had access to Drakmari military secrets, they could destroy the Imperium without firing a shot. They could predict every Drakmari battle plan and counter every strategy before it was even implemented. "Sir," his aide said nervously, "there is more. Our fleets that were mobilizing to attack human space have reported engine problems. Every ship that was preparing for combat operations has suffered simultaneous mechanical failures." "Simultaneous failures," Vexthor repeated. "That is impossible. The engineers think it might be sabotage, sir. Someone who knew exactly how our engines worked could have planted viruses in the control systems. But that would require access to our most classified technical specifications." Vexthor remembered the battle footage from Kepler Nebula. The humans had technology that could disable enemy ships without destroying them. They had somehow learned to fight wars by making their enemies helpless instead of dead. It was a kind of warfare that the Drakmari, who preferred direct combat, had never imagined. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made by every major empire. The Vorthan Collective, whose entire identity was built on information superiority, found their most secret databases had been completely copied. Every piece of intelligence they had gathered over the past century was now in human hands. Queen Zara sat in her crystalline throne room, her massive brain pulsing with fear and confusion. "How long have they been inside our networks?" she asked her chief intelligence officer. "Based on the data timestamps, Your Majesty, the humans have had access to our systems for at least 15 years. They have copies of every communication, every battle plan, and every scientific discovery we have made during that time. 15 years. Queen Zara's brain flashed with anger. Our security systems are supposed to be impenetrable. They were impenetrable to every technology we knew about, Majesty. But the humans were using methods that we did not know existed. They were not breaking into our systems. They were accessing them through dimensions of space that we cannot even detect. The Vorthan Collective prided itself on knowing everything that happened in the galaxy. Their spy networks reached into every government and every military, but now they realized that while they had been watching everyone else, the humans had been watching them, and the humans had been much better at it. The Luminari Confederation made perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. Their exploration fleets, which had been mapping the outer regions of the galaxy for centuries, began reporting strange findings. In star systems that no alien race had ever visited, they found evidence of human presence. Ambassador Lyra studied the reports with growing alarm. Ancient structures, she read aloud. Technology signatures dating back hundreds of years. How is this possible? Humans have only been in space for 70 years. Her science advisor, a being of pure light energy named Flux, shimmered with uncertainty. The structures do not match current human technology, but the energy signatures are definitely human in origin. It is as if humans have been present in these regions for much longer than their official first contact records indicate. Are you suggesting that humans have been lying about when they first developed space travel? I am suggesting something much more troubling, Flux replied. The evidence indicates that humans may have been present in the galaxy long before they made official contact with any of our civilizations. They may have been watching us for centuries. The implications were staggering. If humans had been in space for centuries, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about them was wrong. Their apparent technological primitiveness was not because they were a young species. It was because they had been deliberately hiding their true capabilities for hundreds of years. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, but the atmosphere was completely different from their previous meeting. Where once there had been confident discussions of punishing humanity, now there was fearful speculation about what humans might do next. The Cathlani Trade Federation, which had been planning to exploit human agricultural worlds, found their trade routes being quietly blocked by ships that appeared on no sensor readings. Their merchant vessels would drop out of hyperspace to find human ships waiting for them, but the humans were not hostile. They were polite. "Good morning," a human captain would say over the communication system. "We understand you were planning to establish new trade agreements with our colonies. We would like to discuss the